Welcome, everybody, to the Audio Link podcast. Tom here, and super excited for today's episode. We're going to be talking with Tiago Costa from Ultimate Ears. So much knowledge about in-ear monitors, making in-ear mixes. You know, musicians, worship leaders, people on stage matter too, right? And we want to make sure that we treat them well, and we're going to be talking about a lot of that today. So super excited for today's episode. Check it out. Thank you for coming, man.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Okay, so gonna get right into it. One, could you just tell people a little bit about just maybe like just macro where you're from, and then how you got into this industry and ended up with Ultimate Ears, maybe?
Yeah. Well, I'm originally from Brazil. I was born and raised in Brazil, raised in Rio de Janeiro.
Very nice.
Awesome city. And then I moved to the U.S. in 2000 to work with a church, with a Brazilian church in Orange County, California. And over there, I started attending Saddleback Church, so I could get a little bit, learn the language, learn English, because the Brazilian church was only Portuguese.
Yeah.
And at Saddleback Church, I met a guy called Rick Machel, which was the worship pastor there. One of the guys that had been with Rick Warren since the beginning, basically. And became friends with him. He became my mentor in ministry. And then several years later, I actually ended up moving to Washington, D.C., but our relationship continued to grow. And I was also coming back to California. And eventually, he referred me to come back to a church in California. And I moved to be the worship pastor at this church in L.A. And then after that, a few years later, he actually introduced me to Ultimate Ears, because he had a relationship with Ultimate Ears, being the Saddleback really close to Ultimate Ears headquarters.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
In Irvine.
In Irvine, yeah. And then they used to use a lot. Rick used to advocate for Ultimate Ears around the churches. It was right then when every church was starting to use Ultimate Ears.
Yeah.
Not just Ultimate Ears, in ears in general.
Yeah, in your monitors. Yeah.
But then in 2013, he introduced me to the company and said, hey, Tiago's a great guy. He has a lot of influence, knows a lot of musicians, really well connected, speaks 3 languages, and I think it would be great, the relationship. And then that's when I started working with Ultimate Ears. Basically, in a nutshell.
Oh, that's amazing. I love it. No, it's crazy. We talk all the time. The way that like the most important connections in your life end up coming about is sometimes just so hilarious and like happenstance, which is just evidence of how funny and amazing God is. But that's so cool. Okay, so do you view? Because I'm trying to think about with your product. Obviously, it's on the audio side, but did you come at the audio side from the technical realm, or did you come at the audio side from like the musician realm?
It's a great question. It was kind of from both. My first job ever in ministry was running front of house. Okay. In my church, I was trained when I was 13, very early, and then I started doing that.
This was in Brazil.
That was back in Brazil.
On analog desks?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, let's go.
And then, obviously, that accompanied me in ministry when I actually became a worship pastor. And obviously, my experience in ministry helped me with the connections and everything, understanding how, even with the transition that was between when they started moving, hey, we don't have any more wedges on stage. Now everybody's on ears. Yeah. How are we going to do this? Everybody's going to use a click. I remember using the click playing a video with the click on speakers, and like we would not have the click. We would have like a loop playing, and everybody trying to play with it. I remember
that nuts.
That crazy. It was insane back then.
Yeah, I don't know how wedges like. Well, the thing that I think about now is like. And I think in general, people must have just been using less compression. Probably just because like getting access to lots of compressors was difficult. Yeah. You needed especially in the analog realm. Yeah. So like with less compression, with less compression, wedges become a little easier, you know, because you're not. But I'm like, the fact that these engineers were managing the PA and potentially like
most of them is still managing
8 to 10
Yes.
wedge mixes, dude. I'm like, glory to God. And get it to sound good.
Yeah.
I know some tours, like the Metallica guy, what's his name? Mick Hughes, I think is his name. They still run like mega loud wedges, but yeah, okay, yeah. So you essentially saw that transition happen, and you guys, would you say Ultimate Ears was like the leader in that transition?
Yeah,
when it comes to molded in-ears?
Ultimate Ears have been leading the market since its inception, since the beginning. So Ultimate Ears is the pioneer in this business. We started in 1995. We are celebrating 2025, 30 years of company. It was birthed in the back of the tour bus of Van Halen, and they were the first ones that Jerry Harvey was the guy who invented Ultimate Ears, basically, who developed the first in-ear monitors in the back of the bus, and then they started Ultimate Ears.
Oh my gosh!
And then in 2007, Logitech purchased Ultimate Ears, bought Ultimate Ears from Jerry, and then we still are leading the market because we've been there since the beginning, and we develop, we just
brand
deliver
loyalty.
great product.
Oh yeah,
and we have the people trust the brand.
Yeah,
at this point, they know what they can expect. A great product and obviously good service. That's one thing that a lot of people, they ask me all the time, hey, what differentiates Ultimate Ears from any other brand out there?
Yeah.
I honestly think at this point, other brands, they learn how to make good in-ear monitors.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to say we're the only ones that know how to make good in-ear monitors.
Yeah.
But the service, reliability, that speaks volume. When someone is on tour and they call, they want to be able to have responsiveness. Our turnaround is crazy fast. Regular turnaround is 10 business days. Any other company, they start at 5 to 8 weeks to deliver something or to repair something. So if you're on the road, you can't.
Can tell you guys are you're just steamrolling ahead. You just, the infrastructure. I had this guy worked with me in Chicago that I think it was I think it happened to be a different company that I had the same molds of, but he was telling he rolled up to the one job that we were doing, and I was like, we both needed to use in-ears for it for some reason, and one of my ears was like going out, and he had like 4 extra cables in his bag for these in-ears.
Yeah.
But one thing I was wondering, I was like, wow, these must go out, because he was on tour with MGMT or someone previously mixing front of house for them. And I was just like, man, like, how often must these things go out if he needs 4 extra cables? Like, this is not this cable right here. You know what I'm saying? He had 4 on him, and he just gave me one, and he still had 3 more.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, well, this must happen a lot. And now thinking in retrospect, if you don't have 4 cables and it goes down, what do you do if you're on the road? Like, that service must be such a big deal.
So I'm glad you asked about cables, because a lot of people, they want to know about it. Cables is wear and tear.
Yeah.
I've had the same cable for several years, and they still work great. Mm-hmm. I take good care of it. Once I'm done, I will get my ears out. I will roll it, put it in the case, and then I'm going to go have fun and talk to people.
Yeah.
I have a friend. He is a lead singer of a Christian reggae band called Christafari.
Okay.
And they do like almost 300 shows a year. They are going around the world preaching the gospel and playing reggae. Wow. Their concert is like 2 hours, jumping up and down.
Yeah, it's wild, yeah.
And so the way he uses the in-ears, the cable, is different than the way I do. He goes through a cable every year.
Yeah.
And for a band that goes on tour, I would totally recommend have a few extra cables.
Yeah.
If you go on tour, how are you gonna get, if you're like Australia playing, by the time you can get a cable there, like tour's over.
Yeah, just physically. Yeah, how is that happening?
Yeah,
that's okay. So we were talking a little bit about this earlier, but tell me like, because like in your monitoring, what we do with AudioLink, we're predominantly concerned about the experience that the audience is having. And the experience that people online are having. That's what we are worried about, right? But we all know that everything comes down to the sources from mixing, and the sources, a huge influence is how comfortable that musician is to do what they have to do, or that worship leader is, right? How present they can be. Like, I think of it that way. Yeah. Like, excellence in audio determines like how present can the audience be in the moment, or how much do they have to be aware of what's happening. If they can be completely present, we won, right? And the same thing, like, I think with musicians, and it was like, if the monitor mix is really good, they're just completely present. They're not thinking about, oh, wait, I need to make sure I keep time, or this, that, the other. And so I say all that to say we're more on the audience side, but on the monitoring side, we encounter some like crazy stuff, and like in-ears just like distorting, just all this like disastrous situations that we walk into all of the time, especially because we're not always dealing with necessarily like creme de la creme setups, right? What has your experience been when it comes to like that transition into in-ear monitors, and what do you typically see out there? What are the biggest problems? What do you typically try to encourage people to do? Just talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, well the first thing I would think is the transition that was made is still happening. A lot of churches are still transitioning into in-ears.
Okay, yeah.
I mean, I happen to lead worship often at a big church that has a great setup. I'm lucky.
Yeah, exactly.
Most churches don't have a stereo mix for a musician or for a singer to sing. Yeah. And singing with the mono mix is like buying a super nice, if you have good in-ear monitors and you plug it into mono, it's like buying a great TV with a high definition and then watching in black and white. Yeah. Like, you just don't have perspective. Yeah. There's no depth, there's no way to pan things and put things in perspective.
Yes.
So that's one thing. So honestly, this is where everything starts. And I'll tell you, I know some big churches that maybe their main church, their main campus has a stereo mixes for everybody, but the other campuses, the satellite campus around, they're all in mono.
Oh, why? Why do you think?
Well, there are many reasons. Obviously, this is not a cheap solution to have the right gear. Yeah. Right? We're trying to make sound as pro as possible with spending less money possible. So a lot of churches also don't know, even the senior pastors, they don't know the value of everything and what it would take to take it to the next level. Yeah. Sometimes it's an investment. Yeah, you need to spend money. You can save, you can budget, you can start praying about it. That God will open the doors. However, that might happen. But like you said, everything starts at the source. Yeah. And the source with the musician, with the gear that they're using, but also with the backline that is provided for them to be using. So that's one of the things that I see. The other thing is also the people themselves. Like, even if you purchase a good in-ear monitor, you get to church in the morning, we don't really have a good sound check. We have I usually say we have a line check, just like, is this on? Yep. Like, and once you check that everything is on, the click starts and we go. Yes. So we don't really have time to stop and then dial in the mix. And that's something that I think would be really important for any church to give a little bit more attention, because not every church will have an audio engineer mixing ears for everybody. Yeah.
It's so interesting that you brought that up, because, when I'm explaining AudioLink to people, which I hate talking about AudioLink on the podcast, actually, but when I'm explaining AudioLink to people, a lot of what I have to explain is that we go through we exercise a lot of disciplines in what we do in this like artistic, technical complexity of live sound and live music to do it at a high level and be predictably successful and like consistent, right? We need to exercise all these disciplines, right? And procedures, right? Just like any fast food restaurant. Like if you want the same type of Chick-fil-A sandwich to come out, you got to do all the steps the same way, right? It's probably a little more simple there than what we're doing. But I think so much about procedures and like everything, every organization, like to do anything at a high level, you need procedures, right? But when it comes to monitor mixes and how line check goes and how sound check goes, more how sound check goes, I feel like, just like you said, the churches that I run into that are really having a hard time have no grasp of a solid procedure of what to do. And I think ultimately it comes back to a competency problem. Yeah. But so I guess I'm curious just because you're like thinking monitoring world all the time, right? And I don't think about it that much personally. What would you encourage churches to do? Because like the product that you're interfacing most with is the Shure PSM 300, 900, 1000, and then Sennheiser. I don't know their product numbers. Sure. Yeah, those are the products that you're interfacing with. That you know what I'm saying. You're dependent on the gain structure, the everything of that. What would you?
I love the word.
I know. Yeah, I just said the word already. I'm answering it. But all right, so talk to me like I'm a tech director or worship pastor at a church, and it's just me, and our in-ears are just constantly a mess. Like, where would you guide me as like first steps to take to like develop some type of procedure for us?
The first thing I would do, I would do a workshop with the team. I would bring someone who really understands how to create a mix for ears, and I would give a nice workshop live. Hey, here's what I'm gonna create a mix. I'm gonna run this sound check that we recorded from last week, and I'm gonna mix for you guys how I would mix in my ears, and they can hear on the front of the house, just so they have an idea. Because I have so many people, I say, what do you have in the mix? Oh, I just have click, my guitar, my vocals. Like, bro, you spent $1,000 buying a great in-ear monitors, and you have click, guitar, and vocal.
Yeah,
that's it. Like, I want to have an album playing in my ears every Sunday.
Yes,
I want to like really mix it. The first thing that goes into my personal mix is drums. Yeah, that's where I start my mix. And before I start the drums, I'll start with the gain structure. Yeah, and people need to understand what gain structure is. Yeah, because a lot of the times you see everything maxed out, everything distorted. That's because nobody working from the beginning in gain structure and doing it right. Yes, and so people just don't know what would sound good in their ears. Oh, I don't want anything else in my ears because of this. The reason why you don't like anything else in your ears is because you don't know how to prepare a good mix. Yeah, it's because you're probably using the wrong sound signature. Sometimes people buy in-ear monitors, and I think every brand that is selling in-ear monitors, they like to have more a marketing approach, saying, "Hey, are you a singer? You should buy this model. Yeah, are you a keyboard player? Just because it makes sense as a consumer. Makes sense. But like because I am a user and a musician and a worship pastor, I care for people to know, hey, I want to know what makes sense for you. And it's not necessarily the most expensive. Sometimes it's something that's going to make sense for you. It's going to be here, and then that's going to serve you much better. Yeah. Than you buying 21 drivers, which is our flagship, which is incredibly good.
Yeah.
But like dial in the mix on the 21 driver is not as simple.
No, absolutely. One of the points you hit, I think, is like huge. It's a huge paradigmal shift for people, because I think just because they're more in like a survival state when it comes to monitoring, they're not in like a trying to get present that state. But like the idea of, okay, like I think of how I like learned to play drums. Mm-hmm. I learned to play drums just listening to music and playing drums. You know what I'm saying? I would put my Apple headphones, and then I had those I would like wrap them around my ear, and then I had those Vic Firths.
On top of it, yes.
Firths, dude. I would put those on, and then I'd play as hard as I wanted. It made my drum set sound so good. Uh-huh. Right? I was probably destroying my hearing. And I would play the music, and it was easy to stay on time.
Yeah.
Just listening to a like actual just front of house mix,
play
record
along.
mix.
Yeah. Play along with the mix.
Play along. Okay, if I also had a click, it just would have been even easier.
Yeah.
So that principle of like, okay, for guitar, it is the same thing. You just also need to be able to hear yourself, and then maybe a MD or whatever. So I think I guess just hearing you talk, I'm thinking it seems like what happened, maybe being Sherlock Holmes, church history Sherlock Holmes in this very niche thing, is like there was no one that really knew, but we knew we had to get the wedges off the stage. Mm-hmm. And then it was like, okay, everything's weird. Let's just get the things that I need to hear so that I can perform.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like some of the practices that people started and even like spread, to each other. Oh, I just have keys and myself, and I don't want the other vocals and this type of thing.
Yeah.
Like when people tell me that too, I'm like terrified. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's a lot, So the idea, I guess to encourage people, like, maybe the idea of trying to create an in-ear mix that is more engaging for you, and that you actually like enjoy listening to, might be a value.
Yeah. I don't claim to be a pro mixer. I'm proud of my mix.
Yeah.
For example, for me, hearing a good low end, the bass, is very important as a singer. That's where I get my pitch reference.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of people, they rely more on keys and things like this. The problem with that is like when you're relying on keys or guitar or something like this, you are already competing in that frequency range of your vocal. Mm-hmm. So if I'm putting the keys up on my mix just so I can get a pitch reference, now I need to put my vocal,
turn that up.
And then it starts getting crazy. And then you see a lot of singers do this for many reasons. They start to take one off because they can't
hear their voice.
It becomes,
they're turning their voice up by just taking one out. They're turning their vocal up. Yeah.
And then they start destroying the ear, because the ear that keeps, with the in-ears in, it starts being...
your body starts doing all weird stuff,
Yeah, so it's definitely not a good practice. I usually blame people with the Bible verses and everything, and I say, hey, how many ears did God give you?
Yeah.
Like 2. Let's honor God's purpose.
Yes, he had his design.
He was he designed well. He had purpose when he did everything.
Yeah.
Let's honor that.
That's hilarious.
But it's just important to be able to have both ears in, hear everything clear, and then be able to play the song without feeling like, oh my gosh, it sounds horrible, I need to take it off.
Yeah. I'm right with you. So okay, 2 things. One, I want to talk a little bit about your guys' product, and I think at some point we're going to do a break and do some fun stuff. But one, I wanted to give, like, as you're talking, I'm thinking audio guy behind a console, right? And there was one like just a really, really practical tip I'm going to get into in a second that I hope helps some people when it comes to mixing in-ears. But two, one of the main themes that you are like making me have to process as you're talking is like, and we always get to this, but the relationship like with the musicians, the people that are wearing in-ear monitors, and coming back and developing trust of like, hey, keep them in. I'm going to try to produce a mix for you that is actually something that is going to feel good to listen to, and you're going to get what you need to hear.
Yeah.
It like one. Have you seen people make that transition to like doing full range mixes?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Cause like I don't know, like for me, like I think about like my back at my home church, I felt like almost all of the musicians, the in-ear mixes they were making for themselves were just so just like a basic. It was just like this, and this, and that's it. And I feel like when someone's been doing this for a long time, and a lot of them were probably on generic like 215s or something like that.
That's also really hard. I mean, not trying to pull anybody's situation there with the 215. I know that's where a lot of people start for many reasons.
Yeah.
Budget is one of them.
Yep.
I get it.
Yep.
But, like, for me, it's like this. You don't want to spend some good money on buying a pair of decent in-ear monitors. But most people I know that don't want to spend the money with in-ears, they have a nice latest iPhone, which is like, what?
Yeah, $1,200.
$1,300. Start there.
Mm-hmm.
Have a nice Apple Watch, which is fine. I want you to have those. That's great.
Yeah.
I know some keyboard players that they have like a Nord 6 and they don't want to invest on a nice in-ear monitors.
Yeah.
So it's like, sure, like I think the Nord is great, but like...
you need to consider the value of these different pieces.
Like it's not the value of your gear, it's the value of your hearing.
Exactly.
Obviously, if you're just using this once a month, that any damage is going to take longer to get there. Mm-hmm. But sometimes people are serving Saturday 1 or 2 services, and then Sunday morning 1, 2, 3 services back to back, plus rehearsal and everything. Man, that starts taking a toll eventually. Yeah. And I know people who...
You're saying taking a toll on people's ears using generics.
Yeah, and people's hearing.
Yeah, talk about that a little bit. Like, what risks do people expose themselves to using things that, like, ears that are not... Are there any specific risks using ears that are not molded?
So the thing that I like to say is, like, when you don't have something that is molded to your ears, you're going to have to push much more volume to make it sound acceptable. So even if you're wearing ultimate ears, universals, you're pushing about 30% more volume than you would if you had it
just
sealed.
Because of directionality.
Yeah. So it's a lot of volume. I know people that come out of church on Sunday with their ears ringing. And that's not healthy, and that's not good. So it's important to take care of that. If you can't, I'm not saying you have to spend $2,000 buying a pair of in-ear monitors, but there are monitors that are molded. They start affordable. Our intro model right now is the UE5 is $549, $550. Save up a little bit. Talk to me. I will see if I can split in a couple of payments for you just to make it affordable. But like something, do something that is you're gonna sing, you're gonna perform better, you're gonna be in better time, in better pitch. Guaranteed, it's gonna be a better experience. Even like being able to, when you're not worried about the details, am I singing in pitch? Am I really going with the click? Like, you perform better, you worship better, you deliver better, you're serving the church and serving God in a better way.
No, I love it. It makes perfect sense, having something that is like shooting directly into your ear properly and having that sealed off, and you should be able to run it at a much. I was just doing a like consulting thing in Toronto, and the main worship leader had in-ear molds, but just the gain structure of everything, which I'm going to touch on quick before we transition. But the gain structure was it was not where it needed to be. And once I got her more of like a front of house mix in her ears with her vocal a little pushed and the click and the guide in there, right? But even just barely the click for a singer, it just was like very, very subtle in my mind. Mm-hmm. I'm just thinking, and I was just encouraging her. I was like, look, unless these are attenuated way more than I think they are, like, we're going to start at 12 o'clock. We're going to try to see if you can get away with singing here, even if it's uncomfortable at the beginning, see if you can get away with it. Like, let's run the song a couple times. Yeah. We were doing it with playback. And at the beginning, she was like, all right, I can't quite hear enough. I was like, all right, just give it one pass. Like, if you're just struggling the whole time, let me know. And then by the end, I noticed she was kind of just like singing a little bit more. It seemed like she was thinking less because her ears kind of started to adjust. Yeah. And then she was like, okay, I could use a little more. Then I pretty much got it to where I would typically have it for someone on that pack, which was like essentially unity. And she was great. And it was probably 10 dB quieter than what she was running. Oh my gosh, yeah. Yeah, it was, easily 10 dB quieter than what she was running week to week. And I was just processing the damage she was putting on her ears. So definitely important to like manage that volume is one thing I'm hearing you say. Yeah. And no, that's all super valuable insight.
Another thing that I think is important too is crowd mics. Yeah. And I don't know exactly how you guys do for your mixes that you deliver for streaming. Yeah. I'm sure you have to use some.
Oh, crowd mics are 30% of a broadcast mix. They're 30%.
One of the things that I find really, really hard for people who are, especially worship leaders and singers, people who are like, they want to hear the congregation, they want to feel like they're in the room. Yeah. And they don't know how to do that. Most crowd mics are not, a lot of the times they are not the right crowd mics. Yeah. They are not positioned properly. Yeah. I actually don't love when the crowd mics are like far end, like we don't hear that wide. Yeah. But I understand the churches do a lot of that for the looks because they don't want a mic that center. Yep. That's the best way to have it, like crossing
X,
mic,
Y in the middle.
And that would be ideal.
Be the truest experience for a singer on stage. Yes.
But like having crowd mic is really important. But like I think doing streaming is such a great thing because you can actually dial the mix for the streaming. Yep. But most churches don't have an engineer that is dialing the mix for the people who are hearing. Yes. So like if I get to church and I try to dial in the crowd mic during sound check, it's different than what it's going to be when people get there. Yeah. So it's like, so I usually don't use the crowd mics a lot of the times because of that. Yeah. At Years, we have something that we offer that's called the ambient feature. Oh yeah. That allows a little bit of ambience to come in naturally. I like it. I could use a little more, but I'm happy that at least I have that. Yeah. And I don't have to pull. Yeah,
it's a starting place that you're halfway there. No, I love it. Okay, so two things that you made me think of on the audio side. One is like something I've been trying to do when I'm making any in-ear mix for someone is listening to it. Like, I know that sounds so basic, but I feel like we come across, and Lucas and Brandon could attest to this, so many sites where the engineer, whether it's volunteer or whoever, is making changes for these in-ear mixes and not listening to them, the mixes. Yeah. And getting a similar listening device and putting that on and queuing up the mix if it doesn't sound, and I'm kind of just preaching to everyone right now, but if it doesn't, in my mind, if it doesn't sound objectively good, then you probably shouldn't send it into this person's ears. Like, it can sound objectively good and give them what they need. I think it's through it sounding objectively good that they're going to get what they need.
Yeah.
Not, it's like this just super functional thing where then we just try to make it sound engaging. I think that's like the guy's actually listening to them, which I think a lot of times that this doesn't happen. Mm-hmm. Like, it's the front of house guy and he's mixing monitors at the same time. And it's like, you know, but yes. Okay. I want to transition to the next segment. Of
course.
And I want to talk more about the product.
Yeah.
I want you to share as we're doing the scan. Maybe we could just talk. So he's going to do a scan of my ears. You guys are going to see a bit. A lot of this content's just going to be on our social media. But you know what? I'm going to communicate this piece first as just kind of like a little handlebar, something that you guys can take into what you're doing with in-ears. One, yeah, Tiago, thank you so much again, like for even being on and doing this and sharing your insight. Getting some quality in-ear monitors it's just vital for you to be able to have a quality experience. Just thinking of listening on good speakers, right, and listening on bad speakers to anything is just a world of a difference of experience. And when it's in your ears, you can hear those details even more. So you could probably give a whole laundry list, and maybe we'll talk about that more in a bit. But definitely check them out. And Ultimate Ears, you know, most acclaimed brand that any of us know when it comes to this space. So definitely recommend them. Two, I just wanted to give a quick tip, and we say this to everybody whenever we show up to sites, but for audio people, here's kind of like the general rule that we would usually use is like, you're going to have inputs that are going into a mix, right? You're going to have the master fader for that mix. And then that mix is getting output and it's going into a transmitter, physically going into the in-ear monitor transmitter. And we're talking in a wireless environment right now because that's where the distortion stuff typically happens. It's going to be going into a transmitter, and that transmitter might have some gain, right? All the input faders, the master fader for that mix, that's then going, you know, determining the final output level, and then the level on that transmitter. And then we have the level actually on the body pack, which is the receiver. All of these are so important. And what I tell everyone, and we haven't, at AudioLink with the churches we've worked with, we haven't found an environment yet where this hasn't worked for us to get something functional, despite how expensive or inexpensive the IEM systems were, is set everything to Unity. And, you know, depending on what the IEM brand is, transmitter, like I think the Sennheisers I was working with recently, I was running them at negative 16 or 12 is Unity. Negative 12, I believe, was Unity. But set everything to Unity. And if you have to push, I think where people really, really get in trouble, and maybe you could riff on this a little bit. I feel like where I see people get in trouble is if you have to turn any input past Unity within that mix, you are probably about to create a problem. You should be able to turn everything else down, and they should have at least, if they're at Unity, they should have at least 10 dB of headroom on their actual body pack. And a singer that wants this really singer heavy mix, they're like, okay, I need more of my voice. You're turning everything down and saying, hey, turn the pack up a little bit, And we haven't encountered an environment where that solution hasn't worked for us, but trying to stay true to Unity. And I don't know if you have any thoughts or comments on that, but I feel like most of the time when we come into a ministry and see what's going on, there's inputs that are turned all the way up to the top, and then they were distorting the transmitter, so they turned the master buses down, and then they're distorting it so it's clipping, and they're not getting enough even when the pack is turned all the way up. So then they're gaining the transmitter up, and it's just this like, and everything's eating into distortion. So that's just a tip for anybody that's out there. I think to improve what you're doing with monitoring just practically this next week. But Tiago, do you have any other thoughts, comments, bro?
No, this is great. I've been working with Ultimate Ears since 2013, serving the house of worship. Basically, that's my role with Ultimate Ears. I help them develop and go into that space.
Yeah.
So I've been, serving many different churches throughout the years. I have a major relationship with Gateway Church. I also serve some people at Elevation Church. And all the churches around the country who are not big, who are even starting into in-ear monitors. I've had an opportunity to serve. So if you have any questions, please let us know. Hit us up.
Absolutely.
We'll be here to answer questions. And
what's the best way for people to contact you?
You can either go to myinears.com, or we can also leave a link below our posts, and
whatever that is,
and then people can click on the link and then have my contact info.
Awesome. Yeah, and I saw you're on Instagram as well.
Yeah, that's also at myinears.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, very easy.
Awesome. Yeah, hit him up if you guys need in-ears. Very trusted by the team here at AudioLink.
Yeah, just mention AudioLink. I'll get you a nice discount.
Yes, for sure. Yeah, thanks, bro. Awesome. Yeah, guys, thank you so much for joining us, Tiago. Thank you so much, bro.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.